I think I'm going to be introducing myself for the ninth or tenth time here, and so forgive me if you've already been on these webinar series, and you know I'm Paul Viere. I work for Altisource. Altisource is the parent company of Hubzu. Hubzu is our online marketplace, and so I cover the enterprise of products and services at Altisource. There are about 12, so we have many different ways people use Altisource across its product line throughout the investment world. Today, we're going to be focused on Hubzu, and in a lot of ways, this ends up being the most synergetic conversation that Max and I will have in and around this off-market space. And so, um, that said, Max, do you want to kind of give a brief intro? I know people know who you are, but then I'll kind of go into how we arrived at this.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my name is Max Chera. I work and am the managing partner at Express Capital Financing. So we are real estate investment lenders, right? We only lend on investment properties. That's our specialty and the only thing we work through. We work with a lot of different products. I'm actually going to brag for a minute if it's okay, Paul. We just found this out the other day that we were actually listed as Forbes #3 hard money lenders of 2024 due to our product variety, right? And that is as true as it gets, right? We offer the DSCR products, we offer the hard money lending for the off-market properties, for auction properties, or the renovation deals that you might be buying. We do commercial mortgages, right? So we're a full-fledged investment lending facility that you can use for all of your real estate deals. And, we're here just to provide as much value and education. And that's why we kind of partnered with Hubzu to bring these webinars and to bring this information to our investors, because we believe in providing resources and value is number one key to building relationships.
And Altisource is not a lender, so it's a natural fit for us to have this conversation. And I think last week I sent a client to Max, so and we have good ways to work together. So it's all been very synergetic. Um, but that said, I'm going to go backwards and tell a little story about Hubzu and how we got to today. And I'll start by before I go there, though, I'll say that all of these properties need to be purchased with cash. And so, that will be the final punchline as it relates to how one goes about buying an off-market deal. But they are, for RESPA reasons, they are simply cash-only transactions. That said, let me start. So Hubzu was the first online market platform to sell real estate. It began in 2009. There wasn't a lot of data to support that it would be possible to sell a house over the internet. At that point in time, I remember reading articles. Would people buy presents for Christmas, this year using the internet? And they did. And so Hubzu's been wildly successful. It's sold hundreds of thousands of homes at this point, and we have been and currently are the second largest seller of default real estate in the country, which speaks to specialization. We have specialized in selling default real estate, and that it makes you look like a genius up until COVID hit and foreclosure moratoriums were put in place. And suddenly what the world applauds as specialization, then it is suddenly referred to as concentration risk. And so it's kind of it backfires. And so we at that stage had 1.9 million buyers on our platform and no inventory to sell. I mean, we had some legacy inventory, but as far as new defaulted properties coming onto the platform, it was sparse, and we had some concerns about our buyers and would they stick around. It was like having a restaurant and not having food to serve. So a team of us, started calling our buyers and asking for information about what they're looking for in real estate. And we got some valuable feedback, and it became very clear that the appetite for real estate in general was far larger than what we had historically provided. And so traditional listings was going to be, I mean, it's so obvious, but could we get more people were having trouble finding houses to live in? And so we opened up the door with a program for agents to sell properties on our platform. It's called Signature Seller. It's been phenomenal. And uh, properties that we never knew we could sell, we now sell. We sell multi-million-dollar properties all the time at this point. And a funny thing is we now have 700,000 agents representing owner occupants, people looking to buy a house,
Wow.
coming to Hubzu. And our numbers, as we've begun to diversify, and this is the next category of diversification we'll talk with the meeting, but our numbers have exploded. So we've gone from 1.9 to 2.5 million registered users on our platform, and that doesn't stop by the day. And 2 weeks ago, we rolled out this Hubzu off market. And so we're really excited about this opportunity. And there are so many reasons why we would enter this space. First among them is that when I was talking to our buyers, they wanted off market properties. At that stage, to me, an off market property meant a pocket listing. And I had a lot to learn and waded, into this world of wholesaling investors and realized that an entire industry had emerged that accounted that was in fact larger than the default world we'd always operated in. And so it's very fragmented though. And so that represented some early stage challenges in terms of how to get the right properties on the platform. And so, Max, do you want to explain wholesaling, or do you want me to kind of
Yeah.
continue with what wholesaling is? Because there may be someone in the audience that wants to know actually what it is.
Absolutely. And it's crazy because, if you would have asked somebody what wholesaling was, 10 years ago, I think that you get a very different response today. And it's amazing to see the actual industry just adapt consistently with how the markets are adjusting. But wholesaling is just like wholesaling any other product, right? If I'm a manufacturer, I wholesale it to the retailer is going to sell it to the market. Very similar in real estate, right? So a wholesaler is somebody that's going to go and look for the seller directly. He's going to make a relationship with people that either need to sell their property, whether they're in distress, whether they don't have a lot of time, or they just need to liquidate their property as quickly as possible, right? So they're finding the end user, the owner occupied, or even sometimes the investor that needs to move this property as quickly as possible, and they are going to sell that property for a discount in order to liquidate it, right? So the what it does is, instead of having a realtor represent you to get the highest amount possible in today's market, you're hiring a wholesaler, or you're selling to a wholesaler who's going to get you an investor that can close as quickly as possible. Usually it's an investor, could be any type of cash buyer. The idea is that I'm going to, if I'm the wholesaler, I'm going to put this property under contract for, call it $100,000 with the seller. I am then going to look for the investor or anybody that's a cash buyer that can close quickly and sell that property for 110, 115, or whatever my profit would be, right? So that is, I guess, the idea of what wholesaling is. Just to also explain, by the way, you mentioned something that some people may not be familiar with, which is pocket listings, right? Pocket listings are off-market properties where, as if I'm the realtor and I know that John Smith wants to sell their property, typically you're going to see this happening in really fast-moving markets where they know that they can sell the property. They're not worried, or the seller just doesn't want their property to be listed on the market. As the realtor, I'm just going to say, well, I know that he wants to sell it. If I have a buyer, I'm going to bring them, but I'm not going to list it on the market. I'm not going to put it out there to the market, or any other types of marketing.
That's perfect.
You know,
So thank you, Matt. Thank you, Max. And so we dabbled and kind of ran a bit of a pilot, if you will, to make sure that the proof of concept that we could sell these properties on our platform and that that it showed that our buyers had an interest, and we continued to grow our buyer pool as we did this. But what we did ultimately, we realized there needed to be some standardization. It's a fragmented space. Hubzu specializes in a business to business set of relationships. And so we wanted a channel partner that could help us uh, aggregate these wholesalers, have the deals underwritten so that it represents a good investment. So on day one of an assignment, so a wholesaler gets a property under assignment, there may be a 3-week window of time to sell the property. On day one, as Max indicated in his example, the wholesaler may be trying to make 15,000. But if the property is going to expire, that assignment is going to expire tomorrow, that wholesaler has an incentive to sell that property and may be willing to make $2,000 or three or five. So while the underlying property is worth the same amount, the negotiation around the terms of the contract may incentivize the person decisioning the sale to sell for a lower price.
Like a deal.
So the underwriting that I'm speaking of is inverted. And in fact, it's underwriting on behalf of our buyers so that when the properties come on, they need to be able to move quickly. It's Costco, buy in bulk, move properties. It's not designed to sit on the shelf. And so we are only going to be running a series of we run 7-day auction cycles. So with these properties, they typically will move off the platform within 3 or 4 auction cycles. It'd be very rare. So unlike some of our properties, say an REO, real estate owned, it's already been foreclosed on. The bank owns it. It may sit on the platform for a little while to try to get the highest price. Maybe the seller is really wants to, pricing is more important at that point, even though that's, we don't get to set the reserve price. It's the seller that does. But in this case, we want to make sure that the reserve is set at a place that the investor can make money by either portfolioing the property, rehabbing it, or fixing and flipping it. And so there needs to be that margin available because it's a cash buyer looking to turn a profit. And so one thing before we kind of start showing our platform and some data that surrounds it, we felt like this is a complement to what we've always done in default. The memory of our Great Recession is still in the minds of homeowners, and it wasn't that long ago that people's were foreclosed upon and lost their homes and had their credit destroyed. And now there's a ton of home equity. So back to why somebody would choose to sell to a cash buyer or an investor. You may think you're getting a good deal. Why does this work for the seller? It works for the seller because what if they're about to receive that notice of default? What if they can't afford to pay their mortgage, but they're sitting on $200,000 of home equity? I mean, in that instance, maybe giving up $15,000 makes a lot of sense versus giving up years of your life to restore your credit. And so it can be a completely logical decision on the part of the seller and on the part of the wholesaler. And so if you think about a stream, like this off-market wholesale space is essentially upstream from the traditional default foreclosure process.
And it kind of like if you like as you were speaking about earlier, it kind of fits into the pre stage of those REOs, right? So it's like when
Yes.
we talk, like there's so many different stages even of buying REO product. There's when it's actually owned by the bank, there's the pre-foreclosure stage, there's a stage where they have a list pendant listed and they know that they now need to move. This is where they're actually probably in the most calm stage and they're making a logic, like you said, they're making a logical decision at this point. They probably have equity or they understand the situation they're in. And that's why they're working with that wholesaler to move the property and liquidate it for them, right? Because at the end of the day, if you know a smart owner who realizes I can't make payments, but I have equity, well, I don't want to lose that equity either, right? So how do I keep that and make a good move for myself where I could keep my credit in good standing and can maybe buy a home with that leftover equity that may be smaller or easier to manage,
Yeah. Live to fight
you
another
know?
day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
But
we
yeah,
do
so
feel that this is a good service that we're providing, in addition to being making business sense, it also makes, humanitarian sense too.
absolutely. But yeah,
So
so we kind of discussed, I guess, a little bit of the differences so far between the inventory channel of the wholesale properties, or as I believe it's listed right now, it's off-market properties, right? Versus, let's just say, the REOs, where there's more ability to sometimes make a deal if reserves aren't met. You are working with a highly motivated seller and wholesaler at that time. Um, what would be how would somebody go about viewing or sorting these properties? How would they go about seeing what's available on Hubzu's site?
So I would say that this is at the ground floor, but it's been built, but it is at the ground floor. So the timing of this call could not be better for those of you who are here. And I see 43. Um, what I have what I've done is along the way when I'm talking to people throughout my day, ask if any, people have a need for and investment properties, and then I've started an investor list. So I I have my team sends out an investor list of these properties, and we embed rental data from our rent range company at Altisource, and then also we also attach a valuation AVM through Nest Range, which is another data company, and so we put those on their spreadsheet, and investors are able to say, I'm interested in buying in Texas only. And then you would receive only the Texas properties. Or I live in Dallas, maybe somebody's only interested in Dallas, and then they would receive only the Dallas properties. Now, some are interested in receiving properties all over the country, and then that, right, all states. And so I want to make sure that it's curated to the buy box of the investor that receives it. So they're getting nothing more or nothing less than they're interested in. And so that's one way. And I personally like it. I can share my screen.
Yeah,
I
please
think
do.
it's a quick way to look at properties. The list at this point, as it's the 15th, we actually have 15 properties. We anticipate it receiving hundreds and if not thousands in short order on a monthly basis. However, this is where we are. So, as I said, ground floor. So, I'm going to try to
I
share
don't
my
want to hear
screen.
excuses anymore about I can't find a deal.
Yeah, that's right. If you can't find a deal, then let's see. All right.
By the way, while you're pulling that up, I'm just going to let the audience know if anyone does have any questions that they'd like to share or have asked during the presentation, feel free to use the Q&A box. If we can, we'll get to it during the presentation. Otherwise, if it, we'll leave some time also afterwards to get to any questions that were missed.
So,
But go ahead, Paul.
you tend to love what you create because you're in total agreement with it. It's like when I was in school, I thought teachers loved to hear what I had to say, and my grades didn't improve until I realized they love to hear what they have to say. And then, so forgive me. I've done my best with this spreadsheet, but what we have, and in the very center is what the meat of it. The properties are and addresses are on the left, but in the middle, that is these are the tools one would use to determine what it would rent for. So the cash flow uh, potential of the property, and a lot of science goes into that. We've already talked about rent range on other calls, but this is the gold standard here. We pull from 30 plus public, private, and proprietary sources to come up with the most accurate rental estimate on the market today. And that can be very, very, very helpful. Uh, on those platforms, we do a deeper dive and then put confidence scores and comps, et cetera, et cetera. But right here, I just wanted a quick snapshot. This is just an a starting point for analysis. And then we also have Nest Range, the sister company that puts that creates a valuation AVM, and we run that the same way as Rent Range. Some of the properties, we cover. I think it is close to 150 million properties in America. Some are are not. We don't have enough accurate information within that geographical location. You can see that we received 12 properties from Flint, Michigan, and Nest Range did not produce valuation AVM. It must be that there was something with comps. We couldn't get accurate data. So if we don't have accurate data, and this is actually very helpful to see, we don't give you anything. So there is zero. We're not going to give you a number that we don't have at least a pretty high degree of confidence that's a good number. Um, so this is a spreadsheet that let me know if you want to receive it. We'll send it out. It'll come out a couple times a week, and then what you can highlight the properties you're interested in. The property ID can be cut and pasted and placed right into the Hubzu site. So we'll go over to Hubzu, and but as Max, can you see if anyone has any questions about this spreadsheet before I move forward?
Absolutely. So right now, the one question we have you're about to get into, so I'm going to leave that one aside for a second. But I do want to ask you something from for the audience, right? So when they're looking at the Nest Range value, that valuation that's being provided, is that based off the current value of the property, or is that based off of an after repaired value, or what exactly are they looking at when they see that?
So again, you can dive into the platform and it'll allow you you could go on to nestrange.com, and there you would be able to, click, and it could be the ARV, the after repair value, but essentially there's this is would be the value of the property if it were in keeping with other comped properties in that area. So if it were distressed, it's not going to show up as distressed here. And yeah, and so it should be just an entry point for looking at it, nothing more. I'm not
Okay.
trying to say lean into this number and invest your money based on this. I'm saying that this can give you a ballpark starting point for your analysis to determine whether you believe it's distressed. You'll be able to also look at the property in a moment on Hubzu and see the pictures too. So I think that's it's just a starting point. It's big data. Look at big data for what it's worth, and then you have to drill down. And that's how I think about big data. And
All
even
right.
though there's it's just a column, but there's big data went into determining that particular number.
100% agreed. And guys, like you said, use it as a starting point. There's times that you're gonna find a deal where maybe the value didn't show as strong, but you know more about that area or you understand that area well. Um, and sometimes, you might find it that, hey, maybe this deal does require a little bit need to be a little bit more uh what's the word? I need to be a little bit more conservative with this value because of certain things that might be happening, right? Use it as your starting point and just your starting point.
Yeah.
So I guess the next we've started to get some questions rolling in, which I'm sure a lot of these are going to be touched on. So I'm going to hold off on some of them. But the one of them, I guess, that we can move next to, which is when will the list of wholesale properties be on the Hubzu platform?
Right now, we're going there next. Please send
I love it.
spreadsheet. Okay, so there's a request for a spreadsheet. Can I list a property I have on under contract on Hubzo? If so, cost. Okay, lots of good questions here. Yeah, I'm glad that
Which
this is not a one-sided conversation.
No, it's not. And like I said, that was like the question I felt like we could leave towards a little bit more towards the end where you could kind of walk them through that. Let's, I guess,
Yeah.
keep it in order, show them the
Uh,
process, how it works.
all right, a monologue for just a few more minutes, and then we're going to begin a conversation.
Absolutely.
All right. Tell me, Max, can you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
All right. So while Hubzu has tons of properties, okay, and many different types of properties. We have, if you go to Hubzu, you could say, okay, all real estate auctions, and then that's going to pull up. There's 1,594 results, and you can see that this is a big, robust platform that sells real estate essentially everywhere. And I see 18 off to maybe, that's out in the Pacific, probably Guam. So we do sell in the territories as well. And in fact, we're big in Puerto Rico too. So um, there are different types of properties. You can see that there are bank owned signature seller properties. These are the more traditional types of homes that people live in and sell at a retail level. Our agent community often is dual tracking properties. I mentioned that very early on, and that they like it. It works really well for them to have an agent on the MLS, the properties on the MLS, and we're doing the marketing for their property and finding buyers that would predictably be interested in those properties. So that one really did help us grow by 600,000 users. It's been phenomenal, and I think that there is a Hubzu 2.0 here as we broaden our offering. It will never undermine what we do and what we've always done and done well, but it these new channels continue to allow us to grow, and it's essential. So write down one more is we call it off market. Off market is this wholesale channel. That's it. These are the deals that they will come onto the platform, and this time next month they will not be on the platform. It's an assigned contract, and so it's designed to sell at a discount to fair market value. That's it. It's going to go to a cash buyer or an investor. So I'll click on off market, and we should have, so it turns out we have 22 and not the 15 that was on my outdated spreadsheet. But there are 22 of these properties. And notice how they say non-bank owned. We're typically, I guess we're so used to selling bank owned. But
I mean, there
I'm
you have
just
it, right?
scrolling through. I don't know one property versus the other, and so I'm not choosing, you know, it because I get it. It can be random. This one, for example, I didn't know that there would be one photo. So there is one photo on available on this property in Michigan. It's a 3 bedroom, 900 square feet, and so this property, its highest bid is $71,000 at this point, and there's been one bid. There are 3 days left in this auction cycle, 7 day auction cycle. They're not giving you a lot of information, not showing pictures on the inside, and so that's probably maybe why
Wow.
the property is at $71,000 for the high bid.
For sure.
But a wholesale property doesn't necessarily mean, you know, an undesirable property. But there's a lot that comes through where you have people that have multi-million dollar properties that millionaires have stress too. It's not just, you know, people that own inexpensive properties. It is amazing what we get to see. Um, and
I
so
mean, just as a lender, I've actually experienced a few times where we've actually connected investors with wholesalers, not to just buy properties, which is a big reason we do it, but also because maybe they needed to liquidate some capital because they had a really good deal in front of them. They couldn't wait 30, 45 days to cash out or do a refinance to access that capital, and the opportunity cost meant more to them, and they would actually sell one to buy another. I mean, there's many reasons why somebody would need to liquidate and sell a property as quickly as possible. Um, Paul, I'm actually super curious. I've noticed that some of these are saying for sale by owner. Does that mean that the owner directly has listed their property, or does that mean that that's the wholesaler listing the property?
You see, I think that some of these are it came in through the FISBO route. And I
Yeah,
think I thought when I saw that spreadsheet that I showed earlier, with 15 properties on it, I think those 15 properties abs actually represent the wholesale properties, and some FISBOs must be on here.
for sure.
But it's obviously a very small number, and the lion's share of what you it'll be those will be drowned out, if they exist at all in a short period of time by the volume that will come.
So I may have missed this, but Gwendolyn is asking, she must have saw a section that said special promotions.
Okay,
Do you know
on
what
the
the special
platform.
promotion sections
There's,
section?
I'll say it like this. I'm not involved on a day-to-day basis with that type of marketing. That we have
Okay,
an entire marketing team that's experimenting and learning what we can do as a company to improve liquidation rates. That's the name of the game for us, is to do to sell quickly and at a good price, or the highest and best price we can find for our sellers. And so one of the ways that can happen is perhaps, like a grocery store, for a limited time only. You're going to, people pay a buyer premium to purchase these properties. And so maybe there's a reduction or something like that taking place. So, how they go about tweaking it to have people run from aisle to aisle or inventory channel to inventory channel. That's not my job on a day-to-day basis, but I'm sure what you've observed is correct, and it's probably all about, generating interest in at times on different types of properties.
for sure. So another question that Gwendolyn asked, which was actually my next question also. So obviously when it comes to the REO properties, Hubzu has guidelines as to how soon the borrower has to close, provide certain if I'm not mistaken, they have to give a deposit with a certain amount of time as well. So when it comes to the off-market properties, could you maybe run us through how that works and maybe if there are any differences?
Yeah. So, first of all, I'll start with the biggest difference that I see is that in the off-market world, we're dealing with a voluntary sale. Okay, that's that that is the biggest part of the distinction between off-market and on we're speaking of off-market wholesale. Off-market, on market with an agent, that's also a voluntary sale. When you're dealing with most of the properties on Hubzu, at some point it was not a voluntary sale. I mean, this is a person that was, experienced a foreclosure, and it went through, a foreclosure process. And so that's an involuntary sale. So each seller has different stipulations on what's needed to buy the property. Hubzu uh, tends to, a user would register, and then there would be a bid deposit. If it's kind of like when you go to a hotel, they ask you to, in case they call it incidentals, and God knows if you go in that little incidental refrigerator, you're going to be, you know, paying for your room twice. But in this instance, it is just a hold, and it allows you to be a participant in the auction. And I think it's important to have some skin in the game. Otherwise, it's not a joke. I mean, it's a real thing, and you might win the auction. And the and so I think that it's important to also realize that if you do win the auction, we're very serious about this. And so if there's fallout, like for example, someone backs out of the deal and they don't buy the property, well, that's called you're not invited back. I mean, it doesn't work. The
We're
business model
making real
doesn't
offers.
work if people bid and then don't buy the property. And so I've had buyers come back to me and send me emails, and I promise I'll be good. And but that we're running a real business here, and so it does require bid deposit, and then it does require earnest money as well, upon winning the bid. And it's not that much if you think about it in relation to the price of the property, but it might be, a, a percent or 2% or 2,500. And it varies in each instance. It's not always static. It's in my mind, it's pretty low. It's a low bar to be able to buy a property. But anyway, it's good to have an investment on the part of the buyer to make sure that we have serious buyers. It works.
Absolutely. So so when it comes to the wholesale properties, obviously, like we discussed a little bit earlier, some contracts have longer times to close than others. Is that either is that information relayed as to, hey, this one has to close in X amount of time, or is there just a standard that Hubzu has that has to be met?
There is no standardization. I would suggest that with these properties, typically you have a motivated seller, period. Okay. So the objective is not to create a long process to go to close. Ultimately, the seller and the buyer negotiate that in the date. It's Hubzu cannot dictate and say you need to close on X date. No. And and just like they would get to choose their own title company. While we have a title company and many use our title company, many are happy to use their own. So we're able to we throw the party, we do the matchmaking and get them out on the dance floor together, but ultimately it's up to them to make the determination of where to close and how to close.
Phenomenal. Um, so Giancarlo is asking, and I think you may have answered this, but I'll just confirm it. So he's asking where the data is coming from, right? So I'm assuming that comes from two sections, right? So we already know where some of the AVMs are coming from, which would be nest range and the rent range is providing the rental income. But the rest of, let's say, the property information, so like the bedroom count, square footage, and information like that, is that being inputted by tax record? Is that coming from the wholesaler, or where is that in? How much of that should they be, I guess, verifying on their own?
Uh, our channel partner is sending us these properties after they've one underwritten the deal and two, you know, taken their very best efforts in getting pictures for us and getting property descriptions. And so they're doing a lot of the back office heavy lifting to make sure that when we receive the property, we believe and have confidence that the information is correct. I would always suggest that do your own homework. It's just important, but I would say that lean into it. You can. I would lean into it heavily, but I would still say do your own due diligence.
For sure. Makes total sense. Um, Mike Bancroft is curious about, is the time clock the time remaining until the auction bids end?
Yes. So we're running 7-day auctions. Okay. And the time clock is always a countdown to zero. And and so rather than counting up to 7 days, it's a countdown. Um, I don't know. Some count up, some count down. We count down.
I
I
think it
guess to
works
say,
makes more sense to
astronauts
count
count down.
down.
I don't know. We're going to the moon with this. So
Tell me how long I have. When can I make my offer? When can I come in there and snipe that deal, maybe?
yeah. And so I guess I look, I think that there's a logic behind it to create a sense of urgency. that if you only have this much time left, it does probably prompt people to make a bid.
Amazing. So, Paul, if I'm an investor, I've done a couple deals. I'm looking for a new inventory channel. I want to get signed up. I want to start making bids. What does that process look like? How long would it take me to be able to start making my first bid if I was ready to sign up today?
Well, the registering is easy. That it takes minutes. If you could go on the platform and then you just register and you'll get a username and you're in business. I think that there will need to be a credit card that's input for a bid deposit, but then you're up and running. It will be important though that you've lined up your financing if you're in fact going to need a private money lending partner, there's Max. So I think that that's important to have that in mind because for these deals to be able to buy these deals at a discount, we need to make sure that you can close on these deals, that you're ready to go, so that you're not calling Max after the fact to become to start looking for money because you need to make sure the money's lined up first, whether it's yours or a private money lender.
100%. And I would just recommend that to anybody that would be looking to use financing to buy auction properties. Have that conversation before you make a bid. Don't wait till you win the bid to start looking for capital. That's usually going to, outside of the fact that it just makes it difficult to get closing in time in that scenario, it puts you between a rock and a hard space where you may end up needing to take the first lending option that comes your way that's able to get it done for you, which is might not be the most efficient or cost effective, right? So that's why it's important to have these conversations up front. Speak with your loan officer. We at Express Capital Financing are happy to have these conversations and let you know, hey, look, based on your capital or where you are today in your experience level, here's where I would suggest that you stay. Here's where your max bid should be on a property just as a whole. This way you're not looking for that information once you've won the property and now you can't close and you get the email Paul saying, I promise I'll be good. I promise I'll be good, right? We don't want to be in that situation. We're here to close, make deals happen and get us from start to finish.
And now we're speaking about these off-market wholesale deals, and yet we have 700,000 agents representing owner occupants on our platform, and those buyers are going to have traditional financing needs. And so, buying a property through our signature seller program is going to be a very different process, and it's not, I mean, that property isn't being put on the platform to sell in 21 days or less, and so the sellers are going to be very used to working with financing, and the agents involved in that program, I don't know, Max, what do you think? 90% of their buyers are using some form of traditional financing.
Absolutely. And the thing about financing also is that it doesn't always have to happen at the time of purchase, right? So every investor is a little bit different, right? Some people are more liquid than others, some people are less liquid than others, right? So that's where it really comes that personal touch of, sharing information with your lender, letting them know where you are and how liquid you are, how much you have available, what maybe friends and family that you might be doing, getting money from, and making sure that that's allowed in the product that you're using, right? So a lot of times, again, for deals like this, it's absolutely possible, right? If you're going on the bridge side of things, but sometimes people will go ahead and buy their properties outright and come to us to recapture the funds, right? So that's where, it's really about having a personal person to person conversation, getting some advice and understanding where you are to be able to make the best decisions and make the best real estate deals possible for you.
Great.
No,
Hey, Max, I see a question. I have a few questions that are surrounding this. And this one's from Sharon Reeves. Can I list a property I have under contract on Hubzu? If so, how and the cost? So what we did uh, was get a channel partner that had experience in wholesale to help us, aggregate wholesalers. So if if when you if the question surrounds under contract, if that means an assignment deal, absolutely. You would go through our channel partner here called Flipping USA. And if you can reach out to me directly or to Max directly, and we can make that introduction. And the question is, if so, then they would send the property to us, and they would package it in a form that we would actually be able to, create a listing, create the profile on our Hubzu site. And the cost of that, I think they charge, and I don't want to speak for them, but they charge maybe they call it a listing fee, or uh, you know, it's not all that much. It's just to kind of handle the process for you, the administration side of it, the white glove side of it, and so I think it's a pretty square deal for getting a property, for superior disposition. The next question from Gwendolyn is this list on Hubzu or nestrange.com? So no, the investor list is neither. The investor list was essentially created from the properties that are in the off market category on Hubzu. So we pulled from Hubzu to create the list. So ultimately the properties are on Hubzu. But that spreadsheet is pulled from there, and then we've gone to our data companies and pulled from there to assemble it. Um,
Absolutely. And just I put also both myself and Paul's emails information in the chat box. Additionally, anyone that has sent over their email, I kind of took it down. So Paul, I'll share that with you after for the people that
okay.
requested access to the list. So I'm gonna go to we're gonna start I guess from the top for a second. So Claudia is asking, I think this one's directed to me. So as an investor, can Express Capital Financing help me find funds to buy a multifamily property? I'm going to answer this in two parts because it seems like this question is relying more on the equity side than it is the debt side. So what I mean by that, for just to be super general and speak frankly, there is the debt side, which is when you're getting the loan to buy the property. Generally, that's the 80% loan to value that you're borrowing from the lender. Then you have a down payment of 20%, which we're going to call the equity, right? That's what you bring to the table. When it comes to a multifamily property, those are roughly where you'd be as far as loan to values. Now, we do provide the 80%. We do not provide the 20%, right? If you already own the property, different story. That's where we want you to just keep a certain percentage of equity in the property. Um, However, we don't help with necessarily finding the equity, but we may be resourceful enough where maybe if there's a deal that is in a local location of investors that we currently deal with, and maybe we could pair the two of you up and partner you guys together. That is something that we have done from time to time, but it's not like that's really the main business model that we do. We just like to be resourceful and help our investors get into deals when it's possible. Um, I guess Mike had a couple of questions.
Yeah,
Maybe we could
I'll take these.
go for
Mike
it.
asks, does every property sell for the bid price when the auction time ends? And then follow up question, do any not sell due to a minimum reserve price? So there's Mike, you're aware of how the process works by mentioning the reserve price. So the reserve price is essentially given to Hubzu by the seller, and it is the price um, that the seller has the option to sell the property if the bid is at that price or above. Um, it doesn't mandate that the seller sell to that buyer. The you can bid above, and it's not an obligation. It's kind of like the stock market. Someone just because a call option expires and it's in the money, it doesn't require. It doesn't mandate that you exercise. So it'd be logical that the seller who wanted to sell sets a reserve price, and the reserve price we require it to be below fair market value. It'd be very logical to do that. That's the point of the exercise. It doesn't necessitate, it doesn't require. Typically, it does. happen, and then there are times where the high does not get to reserve. And so in that instance, and that's completely logical. For example, the $100,000 price and the high bid is 80 grand. Well, they're not even close at the conclusion of the auction. And so in all likelihood, that if the reserve was at 100, that the seller is going to say no. And so in that instance, it would be probably, you know, put back into another round of auction. Or if it's one of these contracts that expired, then it would just be expiring worthless.
Yeah. So and the seller at that point would have the ability to reach out to the buyer and maybe negotiate and come to a price that would work for the two of them.
Yeah, we do that all the time. We tend to present all the bids, and Ann Schaefer, who essentially is the awesome and runs this program for us internally, she's constantly countering. So she's it's her job to get people into the neighborhood of agreement and with price. And she does a phenomenal job. And it helps the buyers, it helps the sellers. So if you're selling a property you like it, maybe you could say, "Hey, she squeezed more out of the deal." If you're a buyer, it's frustrating if the auction ends and you were the high bid and you didn't get the property and you're wondering why, and you don't know why you didn't get it. And Ann will say, "Hey, I talked to the seller, come up 2 grand, it's yours." And then you're happy. It's a good solution.
That's amazing. So Gwendolyn is asking two questions, right? So first, is there a cost to subscribe? I guess that means she's trying to say, is there a cost to being a bidder on Hubzu outside of maybe the good faith deposit?
There is not. And
Mm.
no, so you can get the investor list that I shared. That will be sent out free. There is no cost.
Mm.
Um, Someone can sell a property on our platform for that. There too is no cost. We like our setup. Everyone wins at the point of close. You know, the seller gets the money, we receive our buyer premium, and the buyer gets the property. It's all right there at the same moment. And I think that creates an alignment versus, you know, people paying in all these different directions. So we need to sell the property to get paid. Uh, and we don't charge people to sell a property on our platform. We're going to get paid when someone buys a property, period. So we don't charge for disposition. As Max said, yes, you will pay a bid deposit, but to register and be on the platform, to no, there is no cost. You will pay a buyer premium when you purchase a property, and that buyer premium traditionally is 5% of the purchase price.
Fantastic. Now, if as a buyer, right, and I think I could probably even add a little bit to the second part of this, the answer on this one, but she's Gwendolyn's saying so basically we need to be pre-approved or qualified as an investor too, right? I'm gonna let you, I guess, start with that, and I could maybe add on a little bit.
So Max can help you here. Okay. You don't want to be the person that falls out. So Max is going to make sure that you're qualified for every property you try to buy. And
Correct.
it should be that simple.
Now, just to add on to that, like I was saying earlier, right? Every investor is a little bit different. Now, if you have, the liquid amount of money to buy that property with cash, then no, you don't need to be pre-approved, right? You
No.
can go and buy that property with your own money without any problems. If you have that amount liquid and you still want to line up financing for it because why use all my own money? Again, that's a little bit of a better situation. You're not going to be in a rock and a hard place. You could always find financing after type of thing, and you could work through that, but at least you have the capital to close on it. Now, if you're the type of person where I don't have that much liquid, which is most of us, right? Myself included, I don't have that much money to just throw out and buy properties all cash, right? I then want to make sure that yes, I have the financing lined up. I know that I could close extremely quickly, and I have all the resources and information that I need ready to be deployed upon winning the bid, right? I would not be bidding on properties if you don't have the liquid amount until you speak with a lender, making sure that they have the ability to close them quick, what they're going to need in order to close it quick, so that you can make sure that when you are bidding on these properties and you're doing your due diligence and you're underwriting, the values make sense, the numbers make sense, and you're going to be able to close. And that's where, again, a good lender like us at Express Capital are going to build that relationship with you. It's not just a thing of numbers, it's a conversation, it's a continuing conversation, it's a relationship that we build where we're talking to people all the time about properties that they never end up buying. And that's totally fine, right? That's part of the education process. That's part of the finding the right deal process. And that's where we're going to be able to talk through it and say, hey, look, I don't see these deals making much sense for you for reasons A, B, and C. Let's try to find something that has X variable that makes it make more sense for you.
Right. And the next question, when posting a property on Hubzu, are you required to include the contracts used? So in this situation, we have the channel partner. We would make the introduction. They would certainly want to see the your PSA. There would need to be authorization to market clause in there, and that could be done in an addendum. But truly, yes, they would want to see your PSA, the contract.
And that makes a whole lot of sense because you're about to sell that contract, right? You're not selling the property, you're really selling the contract.
Right.
We got
Okay.
a lot of requests for just do me one quick favor for all of those that are request up. She never mind. She did provide it. I jumped the gun.
The spreadsheet for okay. We'll get you
Yeah,
on the
I'm
spreadsheet.
just copying all these emails for us so that you are able to send them out to everyone
Okay,
that is
good.
requesting
Good.
it. For Jay, who's asking, are we going to send out a recording with contact info? Absolutely. We are not going to leave you guys hanging. You're going to get a copy of this information, the webinar as well. And just to add in there, by the way, there are more webinars that we've done in the past that you can go and re-listen to, whether it was about CWOCT properties. I think we even did one on the oh man, don't something seller.
Signature seller. I think we
Signature
did do a
seller
signature
product.
seller. We did.
Yep. We've done a bunch of webinars. So there's really endless amount of information and on how to use the Hubzu site, how to navigate it, processes, right? A lot that we've discussed today, but there's also a lot more that you're going to find in the other webinars. So definitely check them out. We'll put a link in the email that we send out. But if anyone wants to go to YouTube and just search up Express Capital Financing, you'll see a whole playlist dedicated to the Hubzu and Express Capital webinars.
And Max and I are easy to reach. We're going to return every call or email. So it's just, we'd be happy to help you in every way we can.
Absolutely. And I'm trying to, let's
How
see.
simple would it be to JV on Hubzu? So the joint venture will actually occur with our channel partner versus with Hubzu. Now, as you JV with our channel partner, which is named Flipping USA, um, you will, you will be accessing Hubzu. So that data will allow you to list your properties on Hubzu.
And
It's great for
Linda's,
disposition. I look at this world where you have some choices. Disposition, there was a while where it seemed like that wasn't the problem or the pain point. But what you're looking for is something reliable and something that you can essentially set it and forget it, not have to spend your time. The wholesale community seems to be the best bird dogs anywhere at finding deals. And yet it should never be that your deal is, on day one of the assignment, the deal's worth $200,000, and on day 20 it's worth you'll sell it for 160. That makes no sense. I mean, logically you can understand how and why it happens, but the name of the game is volume. Just the wholesaler in my mind should stick with what he or she does best, which is, find deals. And then we've been doing this for since 2009, and we have a track record that shows we know how to sell. So hire somebody that knows how to sell your properties. I mean, we can do disposition better than I don't know, almost all of the wholesale community, in my mind.
Funny when you mention things like that, it reminds me, I think it's in Think and Grow Rich, or it might be from another book where he talks about um when I buy if I'm proposing to my wife and I got to go buy a diamond, I'm going to buy the diamond from a jeweler, right? I'm not going to buy from a baker, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because, you see that a lot, especially in real estate where, we're exposed to so much information and so many different sides of the industry on what this person does and how they make their money and what their specialty is. And I guess people just, will sometimes think like, oh, well, I could just add that and make more money on my deals. Well, yes, there is an element of that at some point or another when you've mastered it to, and you could grow into the next section. But at the same time, like using somebody at their specialty is going to ultimately mean more revenue for you because now you're
Yeah.
spending less time on the things that are taking you double as long as the specialist takes, right? And, when it comes to, I've seen people try to sell their own properties and I'm just like, you're hurting yourself, like hire that realtor, pay that 3% commission. It's worth it, right? Why? Because now you're spending time finding your next deal, which is going to make you more money than that 3% is that you may have paid that realtor or whatever commission you're paying him. And number two is he's going to get you the most money for your property. He's going to work for you. Focus on what we do best, and you'll see the results will come. It's the proof is in the pudding.
Hubzu has 122 full-time employees working around the clock to sell your properties and have done so for 15 years, period. It is unlikely that people will assemble that type of disposition outlet for their deals. It's just unthinkable. Um, and so I want to address two questions. First, Gwendolyn is asking, can a buyer premium be co-brokered to agents brokers with successful winning bid buyer? We covered this on the signature seller conversation, and the answer is yes. Of the 5% buyer premium we charge, we give back 1% or rev share 1% with the listing agent. So yes, we do. In fact, that we do that every day. That's why the program's been a big success because you even have the chance to double end the transaction plus get a part of the buyer premium. So in the days of NAR lawsuits, this is a way to make more money, uh, get your properties in front of more buyers, and it's all open, transparent, and competitive. It's a no-brainer. Then the next question I'm seeing is, why did Hubzu relist the property when the auction ended with a valid buyer? So I wasn't a part of this particular transaction that you're referring to. I'm assuming that the buyer bid above the reserve. I don't know. Okay. If you say a valid buyer, was it above reserve? It was and rejected, then I'm not aware that really like our language allows that to happen, but it's illogical that a seller would put a reserve and the valid buyer, bid above the reserve, and then it ended.
Right. I mean, it just the
We wouldn't relist. We would have sold that property. So, in that case, my guess is that one, the buyer didn't get to the reserve price. That's 99% up the chance that's what happened.
right. And that actually just to bring this up, it actually happened where one of my borrowers was bidding on a property on the Hubzu site. And I reached out to Paul because he mentioned, hey, Max, look, it seems like I won it. The auction ended. I was the highest bidder, but I didn't get it. And we found out that it didn't meet the reserve price. And at that point, he was actually able to negotiate. Someone reached out to him and said, hey, look, you were the highest bidder. It did not meet the reserve. Here is what we need in order to make a deal happen. And they were able to come to a conclusion, right? So I don't think that they are going to relist a property with a keyword here, which is valid buyer, right? If the buyer was with the reserve price was met and the buyer was able to close and was doing what he needed to close, that property shouldn't slash would not be relisted.
And some sellers may say this. I want to receive all bids that are within 5% of my reserve. Then don't bother me if they're below 5% of the reserve. And so on the $100,000 reserve example, the $85,000 bid isn't, we don't even let the buyer know. I mean, the seller know. It's too far. If that high bid had been 95,000, we would have connected them and maybe a deal could have been made.
For sure. Well, I feel like we covered a whole lot of information. We appreciate everyone's questions and really keeping us engaged the entire time throughout this webinar. You guys entertained us as much as I hope we
This was
entertained
fun.
you. It really is fun. And like I said, we have a whole lot more webinars that you guys could listen into, rewatch, go back to see what other sources there are for you to find inventory, find the right deal. Um, I would like to mention one thing as a lender, right? One thing that I keep track of a lot, and I'm sure everyone here as well is keeping track of as well, which is rates, right? There's a lot of good news that's hopefully coming out that has come out, right? We're seeing a lot of stability within the markets. We're seeing even rates have dropped, I want to say 2 or 3 times already. On our side, I know we've dropped them already twice. Um, Before markets get flooded, before rates go down more, find your deals. Don't wait till everyone is in the market, right? Because we've all experienced it, right? When COVID was around and or 2021, I think it was when rates were at 3%, right? Everyone was bidding and making offers on properties. And the problem then was where we were hearing was, hey, it's too hard to get an offer approved because everyone's bidding on my property. I'm getting outbidded, right? Today, you might hear a little bit the opposite, right? Oh, I can't find the right deals. Well, now there is a resource to help you find those deals, and don't wait until, the market floods with more buyers where you're then competing again, right? Find the time to look at deals, make sure they make sense. Again, no one's saying to buy something that doesn't cash flow, something that doesn't allow for a good exit, right? We're always going to be looking for that. Make sure it makes sense. But if it makes sense today in today's market with today's interest rates, I guarantee you it'll work with a lower interest rate as well.
And the timing of this call is great. And while we're getting the word out, the word is not out yet on this program. And so you have the opportunity to be an early adopter of something where there's a spread of opportunity this big, and it'll narrow as more people learn of the program and come and bid on these properties. But right now is a good time to be a part of it.
Absolutely. Well, Paul, it's always a pleasure. Any last goodbyes or comments you want to share with the audience?
Just thank you, all of you. This was a really fun webinar, and I love the participation. And I guess if there's anything you want to hear about, please let Max or me know. I mean, we're open to suggestions. We kind of brainstorm and come up with thoughts, but I- you know, we built this program by listening to buyers. That's why and how this happened. And so we didn't build it because we knew if we built it they would come. We listened to what they wanted and then went about building it.
So, feedback, comments, questions, and topics that you'd love to hear more about, feel free to reach out to us. Again, our emails are both in the chat, and we'll make sure to share it with you again as well on the follow-up email in about 1 or 2 days once we get the recording tightened up. Appreciate everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Paul, for the information, and we'll see
Thank
you
you,
guys
Max.
next time.
Thank you all.